If one ability had to be chosen as the most hated for all of Splatoon 2, main power-up would probably be it. But why is that? I think main power-up is a great addition, and not only that, I think it should return to Splatoon 3. While the ability gets a bad reputation for one aspect of it we'll get to later, I want to talk about all the positive things main power-up provides, some of which you might not even think about. So without further ado, let's get into why main power-up should return for Splatoon 3. First of all, main power-up is a buff to every single weapon in the game. At a time where Nintendo is really hesitant to make weapons better, and where special spam is one of the main complaints, making main weapon stronger is one of the best responses that you can give to that, and main power-up forces Nintendo to give weapons some kind of buff. Don't lie, the night main power-up came out, you were looking at your favorite weapon and trying to see what exactly they got. Buffing main weapons overall just gives more playmaking power to the individuals and for plays that happen without special weapons, which is really good for the game, and it's not drastic enough to where it takes away the value of specials or coordination, which for Splatoon 3 is a direction I definitely think the game needs. Secondly, the buffs main power-up gives are much easier to scale and change. So for example, Rapid Blaster a while back got a nerf decreasing its radius size from 35 to 33, and one of the effects of main power-up on Rapid right now is that it increases the blast radius size. If Nintendo wanted to adjust this ability, they could, for example, make it require less MPU to get a better blast radius size, they could make it require more main power-up, they could increase and decrease the maximum size the radius could be increased to, and they could add a secondary main power-up effect. For example, Rapid Blaster's main power-up also decreases jump RNG slightly. This has a lot more customizability with the nerfs and buffs rather than just decrease this by a certain percent or increase this by a certain percent. And it can allow Nintendo to see how exactly people are using main power-up and what the intended effects are, which can lead to better buffing and nerfing in the future, and overall just gives much more data as to what people want out of the weapons they're using. Out of any of the reasons I've given, this is one of the most important and overlooked ones. Nintendo is absolutely terrified of giving meaningful buffs. Let's take a look at E-Liter, and oh my god, this weapon needed more range for so long, and Nintendo refused. You had the wall paint buffs, the floor paint buffs, the 10 less points for special, and even the 15% damage increase to the Rainmaker shield. Oh my god, the weapon's so much better now. It wasn't until main power-up that Nintendo was even willing to try giving E-Liter a range buff. Main power-up allows Nintendo to give buffs to weapons that they normally are scared of doing, which in some weapons cases is absolutely crucial. Even if the main power-up buff they gave wasn't enough, it might be testing to see what they can do in the future. For example, blasters are a class that have really struggled at being good in this game, and main power-up gave them decreased jump RNG. However, just slightly decreasing it is barely noticeable and isn't enough of an effect for blaster players to use. However, maybe it showed Nintendo that if they want to decrease jump RNG, they have to do it by a lot or remove it entirely. So maybe this was an early test for how blasters might behave in Splatoon 3, and this could be true for other weapons as well. For example, rollers got a bit more damage on their flicks, and a lot of rollers use very specific amounts. For example, flinks tend to run 1 main and 3 subs of main power-up, because that specific amount of damage helps them quite a lot. So maybe this buff was a way for Nintendo to test, okay, this is how much damage these weapons should be doing, and now they can give a more specific buff based on the data main power-up has allowed them to gather in this game. My points here are that main power-up has a ton of usefulness in terms of game balance and making main weapons stronger, and to me, it's a crucial step for Nintendo in order to give weapons better and more effective buffs, something they need to be doing in the third game. A lot of people really just hate this ability because of one perk, damage up. So now that I've explained the positives for main power-up, let's talk about damage up with MPU and why it doesn't work at all. So first up, there's 3 different kinds of MPU damage up we have to talk about, 2 of which aren't very problematic. One of those is Slosher, which isn't really damage up, it's more not damage down. I know it sounds weird, but basically, Slosher's main power prevents it from going under 70 damage in some situations. So rather than increasing the weapon's damage, it makes it take longer before the damage starts having drop-off damage, which is really cool, and I'd love to see it on more weapons besides Slosher. It's not damage up, so it doesn't have the problems other abilities do. Second is damage up that does not allow you to do 99.9 damage. For example, rollers get increased extra damage, but it doesn't make it a less flicks to kill weapon. It's about having more reliable damage. This is also mostly fine, Realistically, a lot of weapons that run damage up not for a 99.9 are weapons that really should have this increased damage in the first place. So while I don't have a problem with it entirely, since it's not leading to 99.9 damage, it's still something that the main weapon should have without the need of a gear ability, which is why I think they should still be replaced. And that leaves 8 weapons: the Splash-O-Matic, Splash Shot Pro, L3 H3 Nozzle Nose, Bamboozler, Dualies, the Squelchers, and the Tetras. Just 8 weapons that are able to run 99.9 damage. This group of weapons is responsible for all the hate that goes into main power-up. Just 8 out of the over 40 weapons in the game. Damage up for 99.9 is a huge problem. Making it so that barely touching enemy ink makes you dead in one less shot is absolutely stupid. It's way too drastic of a buff that just leads to more passive gameplay since you can't really run forward at these types of weapons. One less shot to kill is way too drastic of a buff, and it leads to a more special spam oriented gameplay. If touching enemy ink is that threatening, why move forward without having an ink armor or other special weapons? That's the big problem with this ability when it's used for damage up. This effect achieves the opposite of what this ability should be helping for. Additionally, main power-up damage up takes up so much of your set, since Nintendo's only idea for nerfing it is you just need to run more of it, that these weapons don't have any gear freedom. With the exception of the Splash, Dualies, and the L3 Nozzle Nose, every other main power-up weapon requires around 3.4 to 3.6 subs of main power-up. Yeah, there's absolutely no gear freedom anymore. Customizability isn't really a thing on these weapons, because damage up is so extreme that you need to run this. And there's no point in running any less damage up. You're running it for that one less extra shot to kill. That's all that matters. My big hope is Splatoon 3 will return main power-up without damage up. I think MPU is a great idea, and I love what Nintendo's done with it outside of damage up. It sucks that the ability gets so much hate for just one of its many buffs, but hopefully Nintendo can learn from this, and with Splatoon 3 we can have a better edition of main power-up and have main weapons be stronger once again. With that all being said though, what buff should be given to these weapons that currently have damage up? What's best to replace it? In part 2, I'm going to be replacing all main power-up damage effects with entirely new buffs. I've even added some buffs that haven't been done yet, and I really think we're a missed opportunity for main power-up. I hope you guys are looking forward to it, and let me know your thoughts on main power-up in the comments. Thank you all so much for watching, and have a great day.